welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching the first episode of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the most expensive TV show ever, I think. There are 2 episodes out right now, but I'm only reviewing the first episode because, to be honest, it would have taken another hour of watching, and then, I don't know, I feel like I can actually break this down better if I just do 1 episode at a time, so the second episode review will happen as soon as I watch it, and I come back and do a review of that. It'll be up soon-ish, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. But this is episode 1, okay? And obviously we're going to do full spoilers, we're going to go into it. This show is complicated, okay? And I mean that from, like, the fandom perspective, for several different reasons. There are a lot of angles to consider when you go into this show. So, first off, Amazon only bought the rights to, I think, the movies and The Hobbit and only certain materials, right? They did not buy the rights to the Silmarillion, I think, and a couple other things. Basically, my point is that there is a lot of stuff that they can't use. So it's an interesting idea to do a prequel to the trilogy, right, to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all this stuff, when you can't use a lot of other things, right? So, that alone is kind of a fascinating thing that they spent so much money, and I mean like $500 million, if not more, I think, on this series when they didn't even buy the rights to everything. I think some other company, I think it was like a video game company or something, actually did end up buying all the rights, right? So that alone, that's fascinating, okay? And the other thing is that, I'm not someone who has read the Silmarillion or the Unfinished Tales or all that stuff. Look, I've watched the movies, I've watched the Hobbit movies, I've read the Hobbit, I haven't read the Lord of the Rings books itself. And whenever I had a question about the movies, like unexplained things, like, for example, Galadriel, I remember when I first saw those movies, I was like, okay, who is this person? Why is she so powerful, and why is she so important? Because the movies do not explain anything about Galadriel or what her deal is. So, there's a lot of stuff like that I had to go to YouTube and look up the lore of, and these videos would just explain everything that's going on. So basically what I'm saying is that, I am not a Tolkien lore person. I don't know every single detail in everyone's family tree, but I know the superficial bare basics of, okay, here's essentially what happened. So there's that, right? And I think that that's definitely going to be something helpful going into the series of, if you know the essential backstory of what happened in the world, it's good to know that. I think this show does a good job of kind of explaining that, but there's still things that who's Morgoth? What's going on there? And Sauron was who now? Why did this happen? And there's other things to consider when you watch this show. Just existing online and the fandom and all that stuff. So, first of all, you have your Tolkien lore people, the people who really have read everything and are really dedicated to everything, and they love the Tolkien world building, and a lot of those people, they're kind of in a similar boat to the Star Wars group, where you have your people who are George Lucas purists, the people who, if George Lucas didn't write it, then it doesn't matter, that kind of thing. And even that itself has several angles, but basically these people are like Tolkien, all the stuff, all the liberties that even the Peter Jackson movies took, and stuff like Shadow of Mordor, the video games, these people got angry at those because if that's not how it was in Tolkien's books, then it doesn't count and it shouldn't exist and it shouldn't be made, so you have those people, right? And then kind of an extension of that group, and of course we know these people exist. I've talked about this before, but you have your anti-SJW, anti-woke, right-wing YouTube groups, the same angry grifters who basically their whole deal is that they latch onto any fandom group who might have an upcoming controversy or a group of people who are angry. They'll latch onto those people saying hey, we agree, we're angry too. come watch our videos, come look at our conservative points of view, and that's basically how that works, right? So you have your Tolkien purists, right? And then you also have your anti-woke, anti-SJW group who've kind of latched onto that group, So there's just a lot of stuff happening here, but I think this show was essentially made for people even more mainstream than myself, who, like, they saw the movies, and that's essentially all they saw, Like, I at least bothered to do the work of, like, wait, so who is this? Why did this happen? I Googled it, right? So, like, I think this show is kind of built for people who didn't even bother to Google it, and that's fine. Because here's the truth. I do not care if this show deviates greatly from Tolkien's work and the stuff that he says happened and, what did and didn't happen before The Lord of the Rings. I honestly don't care at all. I want the show to be good and entertaining, so I don't care how far off they have to go from what happened, or they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion, so they can't use this or that. I don't care. That's just the truth. I know some people really, really care, and they want it to be like exactly how Tolkien wrote it. That does not matter at all to me. Not even a little bit. So, like, as long as the show is entertaining, that's all I care about. So the other thing is that before the show, before the episode came out, just like 24 hours ago, I'm looking at reviews. These first two episodes, I saw a lot of people give them a lot of praise, and then I saw a couple other people who I, like, actually respect, like Dan Murrell, like people whose opinions are like, this is well thought out. He's not some kind of, he's not some kind of YouTube grifter. He's just giving his honest opinion as a critic, who, like, they gave both episodes, like, scathing reviews, like horrible, like, they did not find anything they liked about the show kind of reviews, like, and that got me worried. I was like, oh my god, is this really that bad? Is this really gonna be like, you know what I mean? And I gotta say, having only watched the first episode, I have not watched the second one yet, I loved this first episode. Like, I heard people say that, like, oh, this first episode is going to be really boring, and nothing happens, and it's, like, really questionable why Amazon would do this, and it's going to, like, maybe ruin the series for some people. I have to be honest, I have no idea what the fuck they were talking about. Like, I saw this first episode, and I was like, yeah, there's a lot of lore building here, and we're being introduced to all the characters, and we're seeing everything happen. I'm like, yeah, this... And then like it ends with like a oh, what's that? What's going on there? Like, so I want to see the next episode. So, like, I honestly, like, again, I don't know what the hell are they talking about. Did I see a different first episode than they saw? Because, like, for me, this had everything I needed it to have. I honestly don't know what's going on. And look, like I said, maybe people like Dan Murrell are more attached to the Tolkien lore and the way things are supposed to happen, in quotes, I guess, But, like, for me, it's just an episode of television. I was like, yeah, this is just fucking cool, man. Like, I don't know what you guys watched, but I saw something cool. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, having said all that, let's just get into the episode. Let's get into what actually happened here. And, like I said, just like Lord of the Rings, it follows several different characters, so we got a couple different plot lines happening here. So first off, we're introduced to Galadriel, who, again, this is someone who I had to Google their information, because I'm like, in the movies, she's very powerful and mysterious, and she's, like, really important, but they don't explain anything about her, or why she's important, or what her deal is. So this one, I think... How far along ago is this supposed to be? Like 2,000 years or something before the movies? I don't know. It's kind of hard to keep track of time, because it starts essentially with, like, very early, like the planet is early, right? The elves are here, and that's the other thing about, like, the kind of Tolkien mythology is that, like, the elves are the oldest race, and there hadn't even been a sunset yet. And, it's all, like, very fantastical, obviously. Anyways, basically, we're introduced to her as a kid and her brother, and they kind of have this conversation, which is going to carry weight later about, like, which light do you follow? Do you just, like, look ahead, or do you look down? and kind of like all this like moral type stuff, right? Like how do you judge where you go in your life, kind of thing. And then they talk about how, like, yeah, there's this battle with Morgoth, and her brother got killed, her brother didn't get killed. There's this big battle with Morgoth, who was essentially like the devil, right? And then one of his lieutenants was Sauron, which, again, that's something that they don't explain in the Lord of the Rings movies, is that, like, Sauron, the big bad, he was actually just like the second in charge. He was like the general of the actual bad guy, Morgoth, who was the real devil. So, that's something they don't bother to go into in the movies, but, there you go. They kind of bring all that stuff up in this show. But yeah, basically Sauron disappears and no one knows where he went, and her brother thinks that he's still around. So he spent, 100, 200, 300 years looking for Sauron, and he never found him, obviously. And so he eventually gets killed in some battle, right? And so now Galadriel makes it her mission to finish her brother's quest, right? Like, find Sauron, end the evil of the world forever, and obviously that's a lot of Tolkien Lord of the Rings stuff. It's like good and evil. It's literal. It's like, yeah, if you get rid of Sauron, then evil is gone out of the world. That's literally like actual evil. It's gone, and that's basically the premise of the show, I guess you could say. It's just like Galadriel's taken her small band of crew, and she's spent centuries now looking for Sauron, taking these little clues, seeing like, oh, there's like a mark of Sauron that she keeps on finding, and she's trying to follow this mark, because basically the idea is that he's out there somewhere, like, and he's just been hiding for like 1,000 years now. And yeah, that's really it. And of course, she meets up with Elrond, and there's this elven king who, I guess, is king of all the elves everywhere. He seems to be like ultimately in charge, which of course is not a thing in Lord of the Rings, so I have to imagine that something happens to this guy. Anyways, so basically he's like, all right, stop all your search for Sauron, right? Because he's had some kind of vision where, her search for Sauron is ultimately going to keep the evil alive. It's going to cause like this domino effect where, like, because you're searching for him, you might actually end up finding him. And if you find him, then he's going to reawaken, and there's going to be another war, which of course we know there will be, because that is when the whole, the ring gets removed from his hand, and, the Lord of the Rings starts, So basically it's like she and all the other soldiers are told, like, you know what, go back home to our heaven, elven paradise land. You pass the Grey Havens and all that, right? Which is, again, that, like, hey, I remember that. That's where Frodo and Bilbo went at the end of the trilogy. They went off to the Grey Havens, basically go home, leave Middle Earth, just don't even bother with all this. You did a good job. The war's over. There's no more battles. Sauron's gone, which of course he's really just saying this because he thinks that they might actually find Sauron and reawaken the evil. And basically at the last minute she decides to not go. She jumps off the boat. She, says she's going to stay in Middle Earth and finish her quest, right? First episode stuff, pretty great, right? Like, I all of that was really fascinating to me, at least, and then of course you have your halflings, your what do they call them? Heartfoots? They're hobbits, right? I know that, like, oh, they're not technically hobbits because hobbits didn't exist until something. I'm gonna call them hobbits. I don't, see, this is another thing where it's like, I know some Tolkien purists are gonna be like, they're not hobbits, they're not this, they're like, does it fucking matter? Does it goddamn matter? They're hobbits. Look at them. They're hobbits. I don't care. Anyways, and basically we're introduced to a couple of hobbits who, like, you have your young hobbits who, she's like the Frodo stand-in who, like, is looking for adventure and excitement, and she's curious about the outside world. And she, at the very end of the episode, she sees like this comet fly out of the sky, and when she goes to the crater, there's a man there. Now, who is this? And this is like the big episode, like, not twist, but like kind of cliffhanger, I guess. Like, who is this man? Is this, at first I was like, oh, is this Sauron? Like, is he falling out of the sky? And then I was like, no, you know what? This is probably one of the wizards. Now, which wizard? I don't know. Is this Saruman? Is this Gandalf? Is this, what's the Radagast? Is this one of the other ones? I don't know. But if I were to say like, well, how do the wizards get involved? I would say, yeah, I guess they would probably fall from the sky because they're supposed to be like essentially angelic beings that are sent down to do a job, right? So I guess this might be one of the wizards if I had to guess. That seems like what's probably going on. So that's pretty cool, and if anything, if this does turn out to be Gandalf, which maybe, then that would actually explain why he's so partial to the hobbits. Is that like, yeah, the first creature he came across was essentially a hobbit. That actually would make a whole lot of sense, right? And then you have we're introduced to the elven warrior guy, and how he's kind of like fallen in love with this local woman who's a healer, and they're supposed to be watching over these humans because these were once loyal to Morgoth, and they're kind of like, this guy in a bar gets all upset. He's like, look, that was thousands of years ago. My great 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 grandpa maybe fought for Morgoth's side, but like, like how long are you gonna hold this over our heads? Which kind of shows how flawed the elves are, because they actually live that long, so they're not able to see how, like, it's like that was many, many generations ago. Like that doesn't reflect who we are. All those people are gone, like we're humans, we only live, however long a human would live at this point in time in Middle Earth, so it's like that, you see the flaws in the elves, and even Galadriel herself. Like, I saw someone, one reviewer be like, oh, she's a Mary Sue and all that, but I'm like, if you actually look at it, she is like, yeah, she's a competent warrior and she's like steadfast in her quest, but like her big flaw is that she is obsessed with this quest to the point where she's willing to risk the lives of her own soldiers and so that they had to abandon her because it's like she's obsessed. She's kind of crazy about it, like she's gonna get people killed, which she does, so like that's her big flaw, is that like she can't let go of this, so like I don't know, that's some people are kind of weird when it comes to like character flaws. They think that they have to be like, oh, she's competent as a warrior, so therefore she has no flaws. But I'm like, do you know what a character flaw is? Like, did you even see the same thing I saw? Anyways, so yeah, that's basically how we end the first episode. I think it's a wizard that's being called down, and Galadriel's decided to not go to paradise and continue her quest. And obviously that's not going to go over well with everybody, but and by the way, no, they do mention really quick, we see Elrond is being introduced to I can't say his name right, Celebrimbor. I can't say his name, but basically he is, if you've played again, some people are gonna be mad that this is my reference for him. If you've played Shadow of Mordor, the video game, he is the elven ghost spirit that you are partnered with in those video games, because he is like the forger of the rings. He helped Sauron create the rings, and so of course the Elven King in this one's like, hey, the great forger elf guy, he's gonna start working on a big project, which of course we know he's gonna start creating the rings, so honestly this is where like we're really gonna start getting into like the meat of what this show is gonna be. We have wizards are gonna start appearing, we have the rings of power that are gonna start being made, which obviously that's the name of the show, right? So that's really like the exciting stuff for me. So this first episode, honestly, for me, like, this kind of nailed it, guys. Like, I'm excited for what's happening, and maybe it's because I know enough about what's supposed to happen where I'm excited, but I don't know too much to where I'm like comparing it to the books or something. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's why it's working for me, is because I know enough but not too much. You know what I mean? But yeah, I gotta say, like, this is really, really working for me, and my other thing is that, like, people who are really angry that this show's not following the lore, it's like, how mad at you about Shadow of Mordor, like the video games, how mad at you were, all the different changes for the Lord of the Rings movies, it's like, these are adaptions. These are, this is a franchise. And my other thing is that, like, no one's forcing you to watch this show. Like, if you're actually that angry to where you're making videos all the time about how this shouldn't happen and this didn't happen and this, like, you don't gotta watch the show, guy. You know what I mean? Like, just ignore it. Like, what do they say? Vote with your wallet or vote with your viewings. Because if you're giving this engagement, you're giving this attention, then it's just going to show up on the algorithm. You know, Amazon's going to be like, wow, everyone's talking about this show. Good job. You know, like, we did it. Like, that's all that's going to happen. So you're just helping them, right? Anyways, yeah, this first episode, like, it got me excited. I'm like, now that I kind of see where this could be leading with the rings and the wizards, and, you know, like, now I kind of, like, get it. They did a great job, you know, and now I'm just more kind of confused about some of the reviews I've seen. You know, like, at first I was worried and I was like, oh man, that sucks, because I actually you know, kind of trust some of these reviewers, but now I don't get it. You know, now I'm kind of confused. I'm like, were you, I don't know, were you really tired when you watched this episode or something? Were you, like, already exhausted and you know, like, you were, like, half asleep maybe? I don't know what happened to you guys, but for me, this first episode really worked. I'm gonna go watch the second episode, and obviously I'll put that review up as soon as I can. But yeah, I'm in. That worked, you know. Now, if you're gonna, like, say the House of Dragon comparison, does it have as much, like, drama as that first episode of House of Dragons? No, because there's not, like, you know, you don't get a sense of, like, oh, there's schemers and stuff. But I mean, I'm sure as soon as Sauron himself actually starts showing up in the show, there will be, like, this sense of, like, oh, Sauron's tricking all of them, you know. But right now, it's more about, like, the lore building and being like, they're setting up all the pieces, you know. Like, that's what this episode is, like, you know, every first episode of a series. But yeah, I'm in. I'm digging it. That just totally worked for me. And so I don't know. I know there's a lot of narratives being built around the show right now. I know a lot of people are sharing their, you know, really strong opinions, but I don't see a problem here. I really, really don't. You know, I do own the book of the Silmarillion, but I haven't read it, and you know why? Because I tried to read it once and it was really boring. That's the truth, you know. So maybe I'm the target audience because I want to know the world, but I don't want to be bored with trying to read that book, because the Silmarillion was kind of just damn boring. It just was. And then maybe that's just me. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought about the first episode of The Rings of Power. Are you a Tolkien diehard, or do you just really love the movies, or, you know what I mean? Or maybe this is, like, your first intro to the universe, which this would be a crazy way to be introduced to the universe, because it feels like you do need a lot of, you know, kind of built up to, like, understand what's happening. But hey, yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.